to protect their political constituencies. Now, the response has been harmonizing laws, coordinating information sharing, which I think are all really important steps, but they don't go directly to the core burden sharing problem. So I think if we step back and think about what are the two challenges, they're all about trust and money, right? How are we going to share the money, and do we trust one another to do it properly, right? So one response, which betrays very little trust, I think, is subsidiarization or fragmentation, right? Let's have every country require financial institutions to keep enough capital and maybe even enough liquidity in the country in order to satisfy the claims of their citizens, their constituents. If these constraints truly bind, and I'm not sure they do, it becomes potentially harder to run a truly global firm. And it certainly becomes a disincentive to expand. I'm not sure, some people may think this is a good thing, some people may think it is not, but it is an effective crimp on international capital flows and potentially growth. Now, recent efforts at the FSB, BIS, and IMF go back and take another crack at thinking about the problem of both building trust and burden sharing, but again, indirectly through process measures, right? And FSB is particularly interesting in that context because of its evolving role. Right, as I mentioned earlier, it started in response to the Asian financial crisis in the late 1990s, which is when also the G20 really has its roots. The G20 became the preeminent global coordination forum in 2008, but it also goes back to the late 90s. And it was much more of a talking shop. It was not a regulatory coordination body. The principles for effective resolution regimes from fall 2008 really are an impressive step in showing the influence and the growth of FSB as an institution. These have become the accepted, or at least they're talked about as the accepted kind of framework for regulators and governments worldwide to think about resolution. Now, the principles try to strike a delicate balance. On the one hand, preserving financial stability and essential functions within individual jurisdictions. On the other hand, to again strike at moral hazard and make sure that no public funds are spent or that public funds that are spent are recovered. Implicit in the document, and sometimes not so implicit, is preserving optionality for the sovereign countries that are sovereign governments that are signing onto these principles. So the basic ingredients are, everybody should have resolution authorities that should be independent, be able to do what they need to do, and minimize the use of public funds. Again, going back to our seminar, I wonder to what extent these authorities would be used once they're in place. And I think the rest of the principles are very instructive on that because there are a lot of very intricate institutional trust building measures that are embedded in the principles.